Hey, welcome in. I'm Rita, and this is The Story I'm Telling Myself, a podcast about uncovering the beliefs that hold us back and rewriting them with truth, courage, and clarity. If you've ever felt like you're standing in your own way, you are not alone. Let's get into it. Hello, everyone. It is Thursday. You have almost made it to another weekend. We are so close, but you're here with me and Tracy Borreson. Thank you so much for joining us, Tracy. And
My pleasure.
If you're with us, look, this show is for you. I want to know you're here. Jump in the comments, say hello, let Tracy and I know that you're here, and then don't be afraid to ask your questions or share your comments as we go along, because this is a participation show. That's the whole point of recording each podcast as a live broadcast. So Tracy, I know you. I love you. If you are not connected to Tracy, I'm going to put her LinkedIn in it right now. Tracy hosts some of the best community conversations available to anyone on LinkedIn. But Tracy, you tell everybody who you are.
Who am I? Well, I put in my title today when I was prompted, all about authenticity. And that is my favorite way to talk about who I am. And I know a lot of times people will default to what they do in an intro or a bio, but for me, it's really about being yourself. And what is yourself? I know it's a complex combination of things, and I am, like everybody else, a complex combination of things. I am a mom, I am a marketer, I am a retired basketball player, I am a fastball coach, I am next year I'm going to be a homeschooler. There's like all of these components to people, and for me, I'm like so curious. I'm so curious about those components of people and how we can bring down the barriers to let that uniqueness shine. And so I do that in marketing. I do that with my son. I do it with my husband. I don't know that he knew he was signing up for that. I kind of do it with everybody. So yeah, that's kind of the high level intro to who is Tracy Borreson.
So Tracy is Brands That Speak on LinkedIn if you are connecting with her. And I'm going to give you one more. This is her website, tlbcoaching.com. So if you want to know more about Tracy, but look, you hear that intro, and if you know me at all, you know exactly why Tracy feels like my soul sister. And every conversation with her is just incredibly heartwarming for me, and it feeds my soul. And so when you said yes to coming on the show, I was super excited, and I'm so glad that you're here. And if you're with us on Facebook, I'm sorry, I'm getting error messages trying to cross post to you. I'm not sure why. So if you're missing some of the stuff in the comments, but hopefully you're getting the live broadcast. Tracy, we're going to talk about being leavable. So I need you to set this up for everyone. Sort of give us the context around this conversation in your head that was about being leavable.
So first of all, this is a story that lived in me for a very long time. So I'm sure there's actually lots of data points that play into the story. But when it became really noticeable for me was I was on Facebook and I saw a picture of all of my friends together having Friends Christmas. And I was like, oh, I wasn't invited to Friends Christmas. What does that mean? And I had let's back up just a minute, because I have like 10 years of mindset experience coming into that, and that still happens. So this is a journey, folks. And so I had this emotional experience about that, right? Like my interpretation of the story was that my friends who I thought we were all a group. They were a group, but I was not a group. And that played into my story of I'm leavable. And I could see it in my, like, I've been divorced. I could see it in that experience. There's a lot of times from like a working perspective that I've kind of like checked out myself in advance, kind of just assuming that it wasn't going to work out. There was like so many of those things. And luckily for me, I have a phenomenal coach who helped me identify that the story behind all of these things was actually that I'm leavable. And I think, honestly, I think it's rooted in like my sister being born when I was 2 years old and thinking that like I wasn't good enough of a kid. So then they had a replacement, and the stories build from there. And a lot of these stories actually come from that point in our life where we're not cognizant of how we're processing that information, but pretty much everything we become is stacked on top of that. And so, I mean, I was very excited to break this down finally. But yeah, I mean, that's kind of the setup of it. And I also think, like, in my experience, it's very much like the expression is almost like you're blaming someone else. Like, that wasn't me, right? Like, someone else left me. The group left me, right? Like, how rude? How rude is that? But the underlying story that's creating that interpretation is really where those emotions come from. So, I mean, there's a lot to dig in there. You let me know what direction you want to go.
Well, I think, first of all, let's just name this is something that is very common. Everybody has had some experience in their life where they looked at what was going on outside of themselves and they felt left behind. Right? I mean, your colleagues have gotten together for lunch at work, and you're out grabbing lunch by yourself, and you see them all together, and you think, they didn't invite me. Why?
I had an experience on Mother's Day where my sister and my mom and my grandma all went for lunch, and I wasn't invited. And I was like, what is that? So, and personal experience as well.
Yeah. So, I mean, it happens in all areas. You see friends out, all of those things. You see things on social media. Social media creates a lot of FOMO for people, right?
It's true.
And
there's people who are out there specifically trying to create that for people.
Yes. This idea that I'm going to get left behind and not be relevant anymore, or, not be part of the in group or whatever it might be. So thank you for being so transparent and authentic about something that is really a part of our human condition. And when you traced it back to even your sister being born, it made me think about my own children who are 5 years apart. And my older daughter definitely, I think, had that same response when her younger sister was born. It just kind of, it tracks, it plays out in thinking about that. So what impact? So your coach, you sort of noticed this. What impact was this being leavable having on you personally?
Oh, I mean, if I were to simplify it, because again, like, there's lots of experiences that are attached to that, but to simplify it, I would say that I was playing small. So I felt like every time I would like get to a boundary, it would deliver on the story of that I'm leavable. So I just like played very small and didn't push the boundaries. Except the problem with that was that I always wanted to push the boundaries. And I think a lot of us, when we think about these concepts of like abundance, right? Abundance is big. Abundance is playing big, and it's having lots of things, including lots of emotions, and not necessarily only positive emotions. But like, we create this like such a tiny box for us to be in, and our brain is telling us that that's safe, right? So it makes sense that we do that. But then there's something about that box that just is like, this doesn't feel good, right? And so like my brain is saying it's safe, but it doesn't feel safe. And so this is where like I find coaches to be extremely helpful, because one, their job is to observe things in you that seem like they are not tracking, where you said like, I'm signing up with this coach, I want to track in this direction. And so their job is to say like, ooh, let's just rewind that and explore what's happening there. And I think too, again, like I've said, I've had like 10 years of mindset experience at this point. So now I have somewhat of a skill of identifying when I'm like feeling something and it's not really related to this specific scenario. Like there's something.
So see, there's hope for all of us. If
Yes.
we keep this practice of what's the story I'm telling myself, we could arrive there, because it is hidden. You are
Yes.
naming something that is very true. It is quite hidden for us when it is happening. It's why it takes effort to discover it. And what I also like about what you're sharing, Tracy, is that this idea of playing smaller is this idea of the story you're telling yourself is, if I can just not piss them off or not step on the toes or be perfect enough or docile enough or whatever the word is in that moment, whatever, if I can conform. So the story is, if I can conform in these ways, then I will be accepted and I will be permitted to continue. But if I don't, then I'm leavable, and they'll leave me behind. And so, but you also named that your brain is telling you this, right? You hold this story, you're unreliable narrator. Your unreliable narrator is like, well, in these situations when this happened, we told ourselves, well, if we just hadn't said that thing, if we just hadn't taken this extra step. So cautionary tale, step back, step back, step back, right? But then you're leaving some of yourself behind. And that's what you were naming, is that in order to do that, you leave some part of yourself behind.
Yeah.
Your truest self.
And so on that note, I just want everyone to know that in those moments, like conceptually, yes, we're leaving it behind. But the good news is it doesn't actually go away because it's part of who we are. We can do our best to stuff it down and silence it, but it doesn't actually go away. So we didn't actually lose it, which is great news, because like all of this practice that we have of telling ourselves, stay small, stay in this box, this is where it is safe. When we change the operating system, so we change my coach refers to it as a file folder structure. Right? So we all have these file folders of our stories, right? So I got a file folder for I'm leavable. And then when I have an experience that matches that, I file it in the folder. Now, all of a sudden, I have a whole bunch of proof that I'm leavable. But if we throw out that file folder and we replace it with something else, and the replacing it doesn't have to be something that's like completely the opposite. So when we're replacing these types of thoughts, often we think like, I used to think that being leavable was bad, so now I'm going to think that being leavable is good. That's a terrible example. But the point is that there's the exact opposite, right? So we could just simplify it as I'm leavable or I'm not leavable, right? But now if you switch the I'm leavable story to I'm not leavable, you don't really believe that, and you don't have any data to prove that that's true. So now you're just carrying around an empty file folder, and you're like, well, that other file folder is holding the truth over there. So I've often found that like the complete flip is not successful. It's more about tapping into something that you can believe. So for me, and I actually wrote this on a Post-it note, so I remember to say it on my computer, was that I can create. So I can create solutions. I can create relationships. I can create experiences. And this is something that I fully believe to be true about me. So now if I take this experience with my friends, and instead of filing it into the I'm Leavable file folder, I file it in the I can create folder. All of a sudden I'm like, oh, well, I wasn't trying very hard to create connection with those people this year. So maybe I was like the proof edited, but like I can create. What can I create? And then I also get very excited about creating things. So then I'm like,
I
ooh,
love that. This idea of saying, hey, I just discovered that I do care about being in community, spending time with these people. What am I willing to create to get there, right?
yeah, it was
So-
super interesting because my journey with that was that like I felt leavable. So then my response was to leave the group, right? Like the group made me feel leavable. I blame them, so I will then leave. But I was like, I actually want to build relationships with all of these people. And I would say in the last, so like that happened at Christmas, we're now in April. I would say I have a much stronger relationship with all but one of those people since then, because I realized that I was showing up as Leavable. And now I'm like, oh, I'm going to show up as create the relationship with these people that I want. And it's really cool. And hi, Craig. Good to see you.
Yeah, thanks for joining us, Craig. Well, and that got us to the title of the episode is from the song "Should I Stay or Should I Go Now?" Right? I mean, because Tracy and I both love music, and we believe there's music for every moment in life.
Yes.
But this thing, you're so right. So here's the real tragic power of your unreliable narrator. So you create this file folder that I'm Leavable. You're filing away because that's the way our brains are designed. So the psychology behind this is that once you form a belief like this, you pick out all the data that affirms how right you are and you stick it in the file folder. And all the other examples, you kind of ignore those.
Yeah.
Your brain is just kind of set up to do that to you. So your unreliable narrator has all this data to fuel this story. And like Tracy said, then what do? You blame the other people and you sit in your self-righteousness. You're right to be hurt by this. But unfortunately, that takes you away from what you truly desire. Right? That just continues to affirm. So you were sitting in this moment of should I stay or should I go? Right? And luckily you had your coach that helped you. So you just dropped another example. So Mother's Day just happened again with your family. Talk to us about how how did you process that? Because it's family is especially tough because we have so much history with family.
Yeah. So I will tell you, my biggest challenge continues to be the narrative with my family, because there's so many layers of who I thought I had to be that like literally none of them are me. And so trying to peel them away, and I say this to my coach all the time, I have a much easier time doing this in business because my relationships with people they're not that long. They're not 40 years long. Right. But also there's like generally a connecting factor that brings people together. So like even you and I, as an example, right? I met Rita. She talked about the Show Up Positive movement. I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm all into this. So like we have something in common from the beginning and we can build on what we have in common instead of just building a house to build a house with no plans. With our families, we don't actually have that. And so we are born into a family that we didn't choose. There's different trauma that exists there. There's different ways of being that exist there. There's different permission levels that people are allowing for their ways of being. There are different societal norms. There's different cultural norms. There's like a whole swack of things. And then literally we build a house on it and we don't even know what most of those things are. We just like start building because we have to start building. We are having experiences and they turn into this building that is unrecognizable to most of us in our familial relationships, and being like, who is that person that goes to family dinner? Because I feel like it's not me. So in the like Mother's Day experience, I also have, so specifically with my sisters, and if either of them are listening, I love you. And I'm sorry because I created all of this unintentionally, but I had this file folder where like my sisters don't care about me. Right? So my sisters went to the Backstreet Boys concert and didn't invite me. But there's lots of data over the years that I had put into the folder. And for that Mother's Day, it was my sister's first Mother's Day. She coordinated or it might have even been my brother-in-law that coordinated the thing. But like, so I associated the booking, the event with her and my story of that, like, well, she doesn't care about me, so I'll just file this as another thing and that doesn't care about me category, which actually started to become very difficult. It was actually really easy to file stuff like that for years. But then once my niece was born, and I adore her and I want to be around her as much as possible, I was like, oh, this relationship, this file folder I've created for my sister is not going to work for me on a go forward basis, because if I keep filing stuff in there, I'm not going to get to see my niece as much as I want to. And my niece and my son have this like beautiful, like I always think the best of siblings, but without the worst of siblings relationship going on. And so like, I want that for them. I want to be able to create that. And so my sister's also a lawyer and she's very busy and her schedule is not aligned with mine. And like, and not all of her like life decisions are aligned with mine, but literally it was, and this happened after the Mother's Day thing. So I would also not say that I learned what I needed to learn to make this transformation because of that event. I would say this has been, again, a longer process from a family point of view, identifying these stories, but I was now I have a file folder of I love my family. It might sound simple, but like I do, right? And if my mom is having a bad day, I love her anyway. And if my sister is busy on a project, I love her anyway. And my other sister was a dancer for many years. And so she like mostly worked at night and was asleep during the day and our schedules never aligned ever. And I was like, but that is fine. I used to think that was wrong and that was bad. And so now erase that file folder. I love my family. And I get to put stuff into I love my family folder.
I think this is brilliant. I'm really digging the file folder because we have novellas in our heads, folks. The stories we tell ourselves. We have a file cabinet full
these are thick files.
We do. We really do, because this is what we do as human beings. We are, you are a marketer, Tracy, and I'm sure you spend a lot of time coaching people on how to do storytelling in their brand. But the truth is we are amazing storytellers. We just don't always know truth from fiction in our stories, right? Because we are biased. Mm-hmm. People are just biased. And so, this, you talking about the story with your family, it made me think about one of my friends said to me, you're so fortunate, you and Dave, my husband, you have such a really strong relationship and you're going to navigate, because our youngest is about to leave for college next year and we're going to enter the next phase of our lives, our kind of our third act together. And what's so interesting about that, Tracy, is it is not that I have not had times that I disliked him and he disliked me, right? It's not that we have a perfect marriage, but every time I hit one of those critical places where I found myself expecting something different of him than what I was receiving, and really feeling disconnected because of that, I chose the file folder. I choose my husband.
That choice is so important.
Yes. But I do. I mean, like, I really consciously do. I consciously make that choice. Instead of focusing on all the stuff that I'm putting in the for lack of and want folder of our marriage, I decide I'm going to focus on the I choose my husband folder. And
Mhm.
then, like you said, I create. From there, I can create. So I'm choosing my husband. What do I want to create with him? And then how am I going to show up in a way that is, and it does take two. I believe in the Gottlieb research that says that, when you reach out to your partner and they don't respond, eventually you will give up. So every time I reach out to my partner in creation, he responds back to me, and it's allowed us to move forward. I don't know how many times I have responded to him properly in that way, but I can name all the times when I have been the initiator, a creator, and have gotten that response back in kind. And so this is brilliant. This is a
Mhm.
really brilliant thing to recognize that we actually have this song. You guys are just never going to hear this song again. This was the anthem of partying when I was in college. I don't know. The should I stay or should I go? Like, it was played at every party with the keg going and
Should
the
I
whole
stay
thing.
or should I go now?
Yes. But you're going to think about that differently now when you hear that song, because you're going
Hopefully.
to think about Tracy, and you're going to think about your file folders and your file folders that are telling you to pull back, to walk away. And sometimes that is the right choice. But so many times we are applying that good instinct in the wrong situations to our detriment.
Yeah, and I think so. I mean, I mentioned this earlier. I've been divorced. I'm happily married now. I have a very different relationship, but I also made a very intentional shift between those two things to say, like, I will not trade who I am for another person. And
Mm.
so, like, even when I like entered the dating scene again, and I was 30, and I was like, I don't know how to do this. I'm gonna just be myself. If people like it, cool. If people don't like it, cool. I'm good with it. So I'm gonna be myself. And like one of my favorite things about my husband is that, like, he is just himself. He is himself. I'm myself, and we are naturally compatible. we have aligned values. We have aligned ways that we eat. We have, like, there's a lot of things that are just naturally aligned. We didn't have to change who we are. And I don't believe in doing that anymore. In my first relationship, I did that on the daily. I was trading who I was, and not because someone asked me to. It wasn't because he asked me to. It was because I had decided that was necessary. And
Exactly.
there's
That was a
sometimes where I
story,
think,
right?
like,
That
yep,
was a story that you had in
my
your
story.
head.
Yep.
And
And as long as you're carrying that story, doesn't matter what relationship you're in, what job you're in, that it will manifest that way until you change the story. And I think the also important thing to remember here is that changing the story feels easier, one, after you've done it a bunch of times, right? I've done it a bunch of times. It feels easy for me now to just like identify a story that's not serving me and switch it to something else, turn it off. But the first time you're doing that, the first step is to notice you're telling yourself that story. And so that access becomes available in space, in allowing ourselves to have space between an emotional reaction to something, and instead of allowing ourselves to get drawn into the emotion, is to get curious about why we're having that emotion. So when I experienced that thing with my friends, and I was having an emotion, and so it happened on like a Sunday, and then I had my coaching calls with my coach on Tuesday, and I was like, I'm not responding to this until after I have processed this with my coach, because if I respond now, I'm going to respond emotionally, and I don't know what is driving this emotion. So I'm just going to wait, and I'm going to figure it out. And then, I mean, there's some courage and bravery associated with this next part, but I actually shared that whole journey with my group of friends. I had this like epically long Facebook messenger message that was like, and this is what I realized, and this is the journey. And I've been letting myself like tell this story about this group, but it's not because you guys were doing anything in particular. It's because like I was letting that happen. And now I've decided not to let that happen. So we can create from that space. And it has been interesting because like, there's like 5 people in the group. 3 of them were like, oh my God, yes, I want to create with you. And one of them I haven't talked to again. And it's okay, right? It's okay because I want to create. And if that person needs me to create space for them, I can do that. And that's part of how I can contribute to the relationship. But even then, like I want to just quickly go back to the file folder about choosing your husband, right? Because I think what we forget is that when I have a moment that I could file elsewhere, right? Like we started having cleaners come to our house, and the last time they came, my husband left his underwear on the bathroom floor. And he's like, there's like one day you need to pick up your underwear. He'll be terrified that this is on a podcast. But like this, I could put that into a WTF folder, or I could put it into the I choose my husband folder. And like, I can choose to put that into I choose my husband folder. And like, now it's funny to me. It's not stressful. I don't have like that's wrong emotion associated with it because I put it into the like, I choose my husband folder. And so again, when we get to the point where we've identified the folder, we want to change the folder, there's actually like, we could put whatever we want into that folder. We don't have to have both folders. We don't have to be like, well, I'm going to file this here and I'm going to file that there, and we'll see which folder is fattest, and then that will be the truth. You know, wherever you decide to file stuff is the folder that's going to be the fattest. And I always use the phrase, I talk about empowerment a lot, right? So when you're having a thought, like, is that empowering you? Does it make you feel good to think that thought? And most of the time, I will ask it in a scenario where the answer is no. It doesn't feel good. It doesn't empower me. It doesn't make me feel more powerful. It doesn't make me feel bigger. It makes me feel small. It makes me feel angry. It makes me feel frustrated. And so we can keep thinking that, or we could use our brain to think a different thought. I like to call this the Dodge Caravan phenomenon. Based on an experience I had with my husband that was, I don't know, we're having this conversation about family vehicles. And I was like, you know, they always say the Dodge Caravan is still the #1 family van, but this is a few years ago now. I think it's different now, but like, I don't see any Dodge Caravans. I'm going to like stop and count the number of Dodge Caravans that I see on the highway. And in like 10 minutes, I counted 37. And I was like, okay, there's a lot. That's enough, right? And the point being, when I'm not looking for Dodge Caravans, I don't see Dodge Caravans. But as soon as I'm looking for Dodge Caravans, I see them. And like, my son is playing the punch buggy game right now with Volkswagen Beetles, and all of a sudden there's Volkswagen Beetles everywhere. And I'm like, I did not realize this, right? Like, because we see what we're looking for. And so then we become cognizant about our folders and looking for stuff for that folder, then we see those things.
And the gift of being upset, right? There is a gift there when you take this approach that you're talking about, right? Because the gift is, that is the alarm. Hello, you need to tune in, right? I mean, what happens so often is when we get upset, we allow the upset to sort of tsunami us, and we've fallen into this habit of needing to justify our right to be upset. But when you begin this practice of really starting to uncover your stories, instead of feeling like you need to react and respond in the upset. You just see it for what it is. This is important information. Something I care about is happening right now. And the way it is happening is upsetting me. So now I need to get curious. Why is it upsetting me? Because inevitably it will be some misalignment of expectation.
Right.
That is happening. And then you have a choice of, can I see this differently? Why do I hold that expectation? Does the other person know I hold that? Like, there's a whole universe of exploration that is available, but it only matters because you have this feeling of, this is causing me stress. This is causing me upset. This is causing me anger, whatever the emotion, the negative emotion would be. And so I love what you said earlier, because it is not about abundance, is about feeling all the feelings.
Yeah.
It so totally is. But it is about keeping all of them in perspective. Mm-hmm. Right? How we choose to see the perception of that. Well, we are coming up on our time, and gosh, Tracy, it's like every conversation with you, there's so many more layers of depth that we could get into in this, but you have given our listeners so much good insight here about how to start shaping a practice that they can really work on. And so listen to what she said. You're not going to do it perfectly. None of us do.
I don't do it perfectly.
It's a practice that you go through. You get to name everything. And it is, but at the end of the day, where I want to leave people thinking about is this, and then I'm going to let you close the show, Tracy. At the end of the day, imagine that you are lying in the hospital bed, taking your final breaths. And which are you going to care more about? This huge filing cabinet you have filled with all the slights that have happened to you, or this huge cabinet you have filled with all you've created that you wanted in your life? And if you're not careful, if you're not paying attention, if you're not questioning the stories that you are telling yourself, you're going to end up with the huge "Done Me Wrong" compilation instead of the "Watch Me Create" compilation. And Tracy just gave you everything you need to know to get started on that journey. Tracy, close the show. What would you like to say to our listeners?
I would just like to say, let's remember that we are telling ourselves a story. We're always telling ourselves a story. So let's be cognizant of the story that we're telling, and remember that we are the creator of that story. I'm going to share one more example. My son, he just turned 7. And for a little while, he kept using the phrase, "You're making me angry." And I was like, no one can make you angry. You can be angry. You are angry. That's a thing. That's true. I'm not negating your experience. But something made you angry. It might be something someone did, but it's because of the expectation, because of your story that's associated with that thing. And so long as we are taking that experience and making someone else responsible for fixing it, it will not go away. As soon as we take that responsibility back and we say, "Dip, red flag, siren, I'm feeling anger, I'm feeling anxiety, I'm feeling stress, I'm feeling sadness, and none of these things are bad, but this is generally when our alarm goes off. What's up with that? What's making me feel anxious? What's making me feel angry about this?" And is it, if we peel it back, we will get to the point where this is a story we've created. And so I just encourage everyone to go on the journey. I know it can feel hard. It's not easy. I've been on mine for 10 years. I'm still learning stuff. I anticipate to learn stuff for my entire lifetime until I die. And so let's go together, right? This is what this podcast is also about. Let's not do it by ourselves. It's very difficult to do by ourselves. Let's go on the journey together so we can identify more stories that we're telling ourselves.
Oh, my Facebook people finally got connected back in. Okay, listen, if you are a small business owner Tracy has this amazing YouTube program, Crazy Stupid Marketing. You should go over and subscribe and follow along. Chris, early, I want to say thank you. Chris was reminding us that we are imperfect processors. Our brains do not function perfectly. So much of this is about accepting our own imperfection and the imperfection of others. That's the story of perfection. Ties us up all the time. So I have a couple of announcements I want to share. One very exciting one is today at 5 p.m. The Story I'm Telling Myself goes live with our first episode ever. So episode number 1 with Karen Louse, it goes live at 5 p.m. today on Spotify, and then it will, within 2 hours, it will be dropping out to all the other podcast platforms. So we want to help lots of other people find us in the podcast universe. So if you are enjoying the show, please go out to wherever you listen, find the show. It'll be the same, The Story I'm Telling Myself, and subscribe and recommend episode 1 with Karen, just as delicious as this one with Tracy. So you'll be steering them in the right direction for sure. And then come back on Tuesday at 11:30. Charles Collins is going to be with me. She's going to talk about choosing to leave her practice as a lawyer to pursue other dreams, and how she had to change the story that she had in her head about leaving part of herself behind. So any of you in career transitions, if you know, especially like students that are going to be graduating from college in May and are going to be trying to find their first job, they're going to be going through this same transition of letting go of their identity of a student, but there's good stuff there that they're going to want to carry forward with them. You're going to love this conversation with Kelly Charles. So join us on Tuesday at 11:30, and then we have Karen Taylor on Friday. So come back again. Thank you for being with us. Tracy, you're amazing. I love every conversation with you. You need to connect with Tracy. Just do it. Just trust me. You will not regret it. And come back and see us again next week on Tuesday. Until then, have a wonderful weekend, everybody. Bye. Thank you for joining us on The Story I'm Telling Myself. If you loved this episode, would you do us a big favor to help us reach a bigger audience? Simply subscribe to the Story I'm Telling Myself podcast and rate this episode and share it with a friend. Thank you for listening.